Well, it's my honor and privilege today to introduce to you Colonel Scott Manning. Scott retired. He's retired from the Air Force after 28 years. He was a real fighter pilot. He flew F-16s and A-10s in both the Iraqi War and the Afghanistan War. He was awarded the Legion of Merit from the Air Force, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the Distinguished Flying Cross, and also a Bronze Star for his combat. Now he is a consultant in air operations to both the industry and to the military. And I've known Scott for quite a while, and I've heard him speak. And I think his real claim to fame is that near the end of his Air Force career, he went to Yale University to reestablish, and I use the word reestablish, an ROTC unit there, because they had not had an ROTC unit at Yale for 40 years because they closed them all down before the Vietnam War. And he went back, not only established the ROTC units back at Yale, but he was very successful in doing it. So with that, Scott, we'll invite you up and tell us a little bit about the importance of the defense, how important Central Florida is to the defense industry.
Great. Thanks, Pat. I'm gonna start this off by just keeping Pat here for one moment. A few weeks back, this gentleman here celebrated his 59th birthday, and I was there to enjoy it. But I promised him that I was going to get him a gift. So Pat, the shirt that I'm wearing today, I got Pat a shirt like this as well. It's an F-35 shirt, but I did want to give this to you at this meeting today to say happy birthday and thank you.
I guess I should have mentioned in the introduction that he is now supervising and consulting on the development of the F-35 and the betterment of the F-35 simulators in Orlando. Thank you, Scott.
Great, thanks, Pat. So happy birthday, Pat, and it was really great being there for the event. But I just really want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to come here and talk today, because I just think it's great. You know, my whole life moving around all kinds of different places. My wife and I had 19 moves in the 28 years that I served. We beat the average by a long shot. A lot of that was because of different things that were going on in the world, but also because of opportunities that were given to me. So I'm feeling pretty fortunate about it. Coming here to Orlando was something that happened back in the 2016 timeframe that brought us here to Central Florida. And it was an opportunity to leave my first retirement job when I took the uniform off, but to come down here and work for Northrop Grumman for a year. It was a job that I thought I wanted when I was in the Air Force, only to realize I hated it within about 6 months. Nothing against Northrop Grumman, it's just I didn't like the job and the role that I was in. And then an old friend of mine that I had met right after 9/11 out in the desert called me up and asked me if I was happy, and I told him no. So when Mark Klein called me and asked me, hey, do I want to come and join him, I decided to join a small veteran-owned business, BGI, the 3 letters that you see on the slides. So BGI is just a company that started in 1994. Our owner and founder was a gentleman named Phil Dismukes. He had an idea saying he thought that industry might need more subject matter experts, individuals that just didn't want to go fly for the airlines, individuals that wanted to invest everything that they had learned while they were flying airplanes and working in the Department of Defense and try to give that back and help make the products better. So through that, then, that's why I'm working on the F-35 program. When my friend reached out to me in 2016, I was working in Northrop. I decided to join this operation 6.5 years ago. So now, been working on the F-35 program throughout that entire time. A younger version of me, when I was a squadron commander on the slide up there with the Tiger Tail, it was an F-16 squadron that I had the privilege, and I say the privilege, and I mean that, of commanding that unit out of Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina. But here we are today, the Rotary Club, Rotary International. That globe that you see on that slide up there, that's what you're all about. It's an international organization. And it's an international organization that means a lot to a lot of people, and it does a lot of really great things. But here we are in Central Florida, and we're having a meeting, and we're representing your club. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to do this today. Rich, I really appreciate you setting up all of this to help me. And then Tammy, where are you hiding on me? She's way in the back. But Tammy, thank you very much for the coordinations, because I really appreciate it. And Pat, especially, thank you for the invite. I'm not going to talk about all the pictures in the slide. Because when I mentioned a 28-year career, I just wanted to see what a snapshot, what that looks like. But more importantly, what I want you to see out of some of the pictures in there, yeah, there's some individual pictures of a younger version of me with hair on my head. But there's also pictures of me like in the middle standing with individuals that work on airplanes, the guys in the red shirts. Another group of individuals that I had the privilege of flying with in the bottom center of that picture when I was an AT-38 instructor pilot at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. What's unique about that group right there is you see a bunch of gentlemen standing in that picture in the bottom. But during that time frame in 1993, 1994, the ban on women flying fighters in the United States Air Force was lifted. And we all trained that first group of women to fly fighters. And if you look at the group now, it's been 30 years, okay? Because we are in 2023. It's 30 years ago as we were sitting there, we trained the first group. And I'm really proud to say what a unique experience that was. So if you got granddaughters, anyone out there that really wants to fly fighters, there are no doorways closed to individuals to go fly in the United States Air Force or the Navy or the Army. Pat mentioned after all that flying stuff was done, I did have a great opportunity. I was sitting in Germany. I was commanding a models and simulation center. I had an electronic warfare range. I had a flying organization. It was in Belgium that I moved down to Spain. But then I had this chance as a colonel to make a transition to go to higher education. I had the privilege of being, or given the opportunity, I should say, to go to 2 different schools. I did a master's degree in London in 1999. I did another master's degree in Alabama in 2007. I never finished a PhD, but I was able to go and teach as a professor adjunct. My first stop was at Norwich University up in central Vermont. It was spared all the flooding that took place up there. It's a small private military college up there, but tremendous cybersecurity programs, engineering programs, and basically leadership programs. And if you have young people looking for a different experience for a collegiate education away from your Alabamas, your Floridas, your SEC schools, or whatever other school that's out there, Norwich is one of those unique places. The picture in the very middle, I just want to highlight, the guy with the red tie on is Gordon Sullivan. He's a Norwich grad, but he was the chief of staff of the U.S. Army. And he sat on the board of trustees at Norwich University, and I got to know Gordon very well. Tremendous gentleman, tremendous person, tremendous leader. But that's the kind of product that Norwich puts out there each and every day. 2 years into that Norwich assignment, this is between 2010, 2012, I was given the opportunity, as Pat mentioned, to go put the Air Force back on the campus at Yale. So one of the interesting historical aspects of that is, and just to kind of let you know, just the flavors that are out there, is just the Air Force had a presence on the campus all the way up through 1955, but then left. And the Air Force's main focus was to teach people foreign languages. Some of you may ask, well, why? Well, if you look back in the 50s, there was all this turmoil coming out of the Second World War. There was a little Chinese revolution that took place, and then there was a breakaway island that we call Taiwan. And so the Air Force was putting a lot of linguists on the island in Taiwan to listen to what was going on in mainland China. So some fascinating history that Yale had, but they broke that relationship off with the Air Force. And then the faculty voted to kick the Army and the Navy off of campus, basically in a vote in 1970, and they were completely gone off the campus by 1972. So here comes Scott Manning, United States Air Force Colonel in 2012, so 40 years later, to kind of step back onto that campus. So I was first boots on the ground after 4 decades to try to reestablish a relationship with individuals that really hadn't talked to uniforms in a long, long time. So what I didn't realize at the time, though, when I stepped on the campus, is that I was a victim. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and shared with me that I was a victim because I had to serve. So it was great for me to meet with all kinds of groups on campus to let them know that I chose to serve. It was an opportunity that I really wanted to exploit, and I wanted to wear the uniform. I wanted to really sink my heart and soul into service to the country. So to me, I took it full bore and said, hey, this is a full-blown educational opportunity. In that experience, I did get to work with a fantastic Oxford PhD that had been teaching at Yale for 29 years at that time, but he was never allowed to teach his specialty, which was military history. So in 2012, in the fall, Paul Kennedy got to teach military history for the first time in his professional career at Yale as being on the faculty. So to me, it was a lot of really great positives, and it was a great experience. So now you take this fighter pilot guy who then spends time in the university. He's getting out of the Air Force and he's retiring. He goes, okay, now what am I going to do? Because I really didn't want to fly for the airlines. So Norwich University back up in central Vermont had a great little research institute doing cybersecurity. Anybody in the healthcare fields out here? Anybody? Okay. So my youngest son works for Fortified Health Security, cybersecurity to protect healthcare records. Your healthcare records are worth more on the black market right now than anything you have in your wallet right now. So what we were doing up at Norwich is we were trying to create a model not only to protect healthcare records, but also we wanted to replicate the stock market. The president of that research institute, standing down at the New World Trade Center in New York City, is a guy named Phil Sussman in the picture. Phil asked me to come back and work at Norwich. I went back to work in the research institute as a vice president, mainly so that we could help protect everyone's money and your stocks, your bonds, everything taking place down in the stock exchange in New York. So for a year and a half, I ran around doing cybersecurity exercises for the financial sector with a model that we developed to try to train all the leaders. And as I look around this room, I see a room full of leaders. And what we were really trying to do is get people at the upper level management to make decisions on when they had to pick up the phone and call their regulator and say, I think my last best known trade was at 10 a.m. yesterday morning or this morning because of all these things that have now occurred and all the indicators and warnings that people were saying, hey, we think we've got some really bad trades and some people have really been interfering with it. It's a really big deal to get a financial institution. Where's all my finance people in here? Anybody? Yeah, it's a really big deal when a financial institution finally has to say, hey, I think we've got a problem. So it was really rewarding. It was great. But I was living on 6 acres in the woods in New Hampshire. Gorgeous. It was beautiful. It sounds idyllic, except in December under a full moon with no lights, with the only illumination on my snowblower what I bought. So that's when I said, no, we got to get south. And that's what brought us down here. So Pat mentioned combat experience. I'll come back to flying just real quick. Yes, I did have the privilege of serving the country and going over and doing some things. I will tell you, Pat was sharing a story with me at lunch today about an individual that Oppenheimer movie's out, atomic bomb explosions during all the initial tests when all that occurred. If you look at the sandstorm picture down there, Pat was describing for me what a friend of his experienced flying through one of the mushroom clouds after one of those weapons went off. Flying in the Middle East in the middle of one of the giant sandstorms is not fun either. A lot of dirt and stuff hitting the canopy, and you're asking yourself the question at 30,000 feet, why is there dirt hitting the front of my canopy? Because it really shouldn't be there, but there's a lot of dirt that gets kicked up. But tremendous experience, worked with a fantastic group of individuals. A big international career too, and I'm just throwing up just a snapshot and not really drawing any attention to it other than just to share with you is that living overseas for 9 years of the 28 in service, traveling a lot extensively now. I go and visit all of our allied sites that are flying the F-35. This year alone, I've been in the UK, I've been in South Korea twice. It looks like I'll probably be going to Australia right before Christmas to help our allies down in Australia. And all of that though, and the experiences that I've had, I really, as I look at the Rotary and what you do, and if I think about it, I mean, it's all about what we're about. It's about understanding cultures and relationships. In that picture there, you're going to see me standing next to a gentleman next to a kind of a white and gray helicopter. I'm going to come back to that individual. His name is Amir Khan, and he's from Pakistan, and he was an F-16 pilot. When I first met him, he was very angry with me in 1999. He was angry with me because he was an F-16 pilot, and at that time, we had cut off all the parts to Pakistan to fly their F-16s. So he wasn't flying his F-16 as much as I had been flying mine. So we were trading a few stories, and he was really mad, but I said, I'm going to make friends with this guy. It was paramount for me to make friends with this guy, to understand what was really irritating him, and then to figure out where I could form a relationship with him. But the very first meeting was extremely adversarial. But I'm happy to say, you know, we made a good friendship, and it was good to go. Part of my international career too, when I was serving in Germany, moving a unit from Belgium to Spain is no easy trick, especially when you're dealing with other governments, other laws, U.S. laws. Hey, what can we do? What can't we do? But the one picture you see up there with a group of individuals at a table, I'm sitting at the far end. That was a signing ceremony when we opened up a new training organizations in the Midland portions of Spain. Spain had opened up all kinds of airspace for about 10 nations that wanted to join as a group and fly and fight and train together. All NATO nations, but nations willing to pay a little extra to train at a higher level. So it was a tremendous experience. And just a tremendous opportunity to be part of that and form the relationship with all those international guys in the picture, because there are very distinct differences to this very day. And I will tell you, the Germans and the French still don't like each other. And that plays out in every meeting. Israel's a strong ally of the U.S. I had the privilege of delivering them an airplane at one point in my career, and then just getting over there and understanding all the aspects and everything that they are dealing with on a day in and day out basis. So those are just some pictures of when I flew in over there. All right, how many military, ex-military folks do I have in here? Just like, okay, quite a few. And you understand this, and these maps are constantly changing. So this one is not currently up to date. But there's a broader Department of Defense view of the world, and there's a broader State Department view of the world. And where do those two meet? And I think it's really key, even here in Central Florida, understanding that where those two meet, because a military commander may see something different. Okay, and Secretary Austin right now may see something different than the Secretary of State at this current time. So, and as they're looking at where those two seams meet is really critical. If there's a military operation somewhere in the world, State Department has to be involved. And we need to understand them. My company right now, as we're supporting the F-35 program, Central Florida should be very proud. You have two big Lockheed facilities right here. You got one over by Sand Lake, and the other one where I work is out at the bottom of Rouse Road. And that tiny little campus, I should say, it's not too tiny, but on that campus at the end of Rouse Road, that's where we're making all the F-35 simulators. For all of our allies, for all the countries, for the United States Marine Corps, the Navy, the Air Force. I'm jumping in and out of those simulators every day. This morning I was in one. I'm going to go back after this meeting. I'll be in one this afternoon, and I will actually be flying for our allies in Italy this afternoon, working on some stuff for them. So it is a tremendous experience, and what we do in influencing the development of that is really critical, because when I was younger, flying airplane simulators weren't all that great, especially when it came to fighters. What we do now is we really match up a really high-end fighter simulator with a threat generation system so that they can train at a very, very high level. So I'm pretty passionate about it. I don't make as much money as an airline captain, all right, but I don't need to, because that's not where I draw my satisfaction. Right now, my peers that are flying for the airlines are probably making a good 125 or more a year. It doesn't matter to me. What I really care about is making this thing work. My company that I work for, I'm just showing that map up to you because I want you to see we have a pretty big footprint throughout the country, but what you will see is that we are impacting the Department of Defense in many, many locations. So I'm really proud of our CEO when he established the company in 1994, because it's where we're at today. We're basically involved with aviation test training systems, aviation instruction and courseware, as you see up there, but also aviation data science. We're growing out a tremendous engineering arm. If you have any folks that are out there and they're looking for something new, just jump on the BGI website that are engineers if they want to get involved with anything in the defense sector. And if they see if there's a job out there they want to just give me a holler, get my information for Pat or Tammy, and we can get them hooked up and have them go find something maybe exciting if they want to break out, do something different. This was just an evolutionary slide, because if I go back to when Phil was first bringing the company online in 1994, you can see a lot of subcontracting things. You see an evolution where we're moving more into like prime contractual roles. And I think that's really important too, because it's, again, an evolution of a company over time. It's always good to see when you're landing your own direct contracts to support what I like to affectionately call the war fighters in the field. We've had a long-standing partnership with Lockheed Martin. We'd like to keep it that way for a very, very long time, but it's going on 25 years now. It's a robust and healthy relationship. So we continue to support, and as long as they continue to ask us to come back, we'll be there probably until I'm dead, because we can't find younger guys to do what I'm doing. All right. I told you I'd come back to the guy in the helicopter. There he is again at the bottom of that slide. Okay. On the top picture up there, you're going to see a taller guy wearing a blue coat. His legs are kind of spread apart a little bit. And we're on the deck of a British aircraft carrier back in 1999. The taller guy is actually an admiral in the Navy, the Indian Navy right now. And obviously India and Pakistan have an interesting history. There were a lot of things that happened when the UK had actually had possession of the territory. There was a partition that took place. But those two individuals didn't like each other either. So I had a Pakistani guy that didn't like me, and I had an Indian guy that liked me, but these two didn't want me talking to them individually. So the lawnmower, you're probably curious, where's this all coming in? Okay. So I had a lawnmower, they did not. Okay, we're all going to school together in London. We're doing a master's degree together. And one day I loaned the lawnmower to the Pakistani guy because I made really good friends with him. And I'm getting a phone call within 30 minutes because the Indian guy lived about 5 houses down the road. And Sanjay says to me, he goes, I see the strategic dynamic in the world has changed. And I said, Sanjay, I'm not sure I understand the question or the statement. And he says, well, Amar's out cutting his grass right now with your lawnmower. And I said, Sanjay, I will promise you that you can use the lawnmower next and I will bring you more gas. So the relationship that was formed, and one of my goals was, how do I get these two guys to talk together? Okay, because I'm loaning my lawnmower out, so I equally loan it out. And I gave them both gas. I never made them fill it up. They didn't change any oil. So I continued this on for a long time. Towards the end of my stint over in the UK doing the school with those two guys, I had them both sitting down in the front of a ferry boat coming back from seeing the Normandy beaches, and they were talking. So to me, this is what your influence is, right? I heard the relationship terms. I heard everything you were saying. This is what your influence is. It's about getting people to talk to each other, form a relationship, find out what your distances are or differences are, and then resolve. Big family guy, big faith guy. Born in Western Pennsylvania, so between Western Pennsylvania and Ohio. So had fun up in Ohio. That's where I pretty much grew up. I never really went back. But again, I have 2 sons. I have 2 daughter-in-laws. But it was a great run even through all the years of service. But then you get to this hard part, this last slide here. The hard part of service are when you lose dear friends. Both of these individuals that you see there holding their children in the bottom. I was in combat with both of these guys. They will go back to Afghanistan a handful of years later. They will both be killed on the same day by an insider attack. An Afghan officer came in, decided it was time. He took out 9 Americans on a single day at the Kabul International Airport. So these guys will always be near and dear to me. Their families, I stay in touch with them. Stay in touch. Those 2 little kids in red down there are fully grown, wonderful young adults. Their mother's done a fantastic job. Susie's done a fantastic job. But you can never replace Dave. I'll be with us in a minute. One of the interesting things about Yale, I'll just close with this slide, is they had our nation's first spy. And if you're not familiar with the history of Nathan Hale, Yale for a long time had a fantastic relationship with our CIA. And then they divorced that relationship. I think they're trying to bring it back together. But Nathan Hale was spying. He was spying against the British. He was hauled off and he was hanged in New York. But he was the class of 1773. And that statue stands on campus. And I do firmly believe in that because I do believe in this country. I believe in serving this country, and I believe in giving it all she's worth because it's a fantastic place to live. And whatever we can do to make it a better place, I think we all win throughout that. So with that, I open the floor for questions. Yeah, so the question being the ranking of air forces. So I think what I'd rather start off with is right now what you're seeing around the world is an atrophying of air forces, big time. A year ago, I was in the Netherlands, a fantastic air force, drawing down from 248 F-16s down to 60 F-35s. So think about what I just said. These are our allies. Okay, so when people go out and say, hey, we're going to get our allies, to support us, our allies now are coming with really small buckets of capability, but very capable capability. So it's interesting. You put the U.S. Air Force up there, but then you can put your what I'll call some of the top dogs on the porch right up there with us. The Norwegians are very capable. The Dutch are very capable. The Belgian pilots are extremely capable. The Danish pilots are extremely. So all the Vikings are very, very capable. And now we got Sweden joining NATO. So now, and then Finland's going to join. We're going to have all the Nordic nations, which are all extremely, extremely good at how they operate airplanes. And then you tack in the UK, always the Royal Air Force in its long history, fantastic. When you head over to the Pacific, Singapore, Japan, Australia, and the South Koreans never underestimate what their capabilities are. They have a fantastic Air Force and they are flying the F-35 as well. So it's really interesting to me, on this whole rank ordering, but it's also a size and scale issue. The nice thing is everyone seems to go very interoperable now, so that we can all participate together and share together so that we can basically defeat whatever threat comes up. Next question. Yes, sir.
Colonel, we've got the F-22 and the F-35 you're wearing the shirt of. Are these fighters sufficient to carry us forward in the event of future military engagement?
So here's my personal opinion. Just throw this out right now. The airplanes themselves are extremely capable. Where I feel that the nation has really lost out, maybe in the last 20 or 30 years, is maybe in the weapons. And a lot of near peers or peer adversaries that are out there in the world are really catching up. And I think you'll hear that from almost anybody that gives a speech nowadays. General C.Q. Brown, who was just our Chief of Staff of the Air Force, now becoming the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you read anything that CQ has put out there, and he's a friend of mine, if you read anything that CQ has put out there in speeches lately, he's going to tell you this about, weapons and capabilities. So what's nice is there's been some articles written about this next generation air dominance fighter, Tommy, and that NGAD, as they're calling it, is going to be a very unique system. And when it finally comes out and people start flying with it, it's going to be a real big game changer. And that's where you as an American, me as an American, everyone's American, be very, very proud we're on this team. It's a very, very capable team. Yes, sir.
Colonel, thanks for addressing us. What's the deal? Why can't we get the F-16s over to the Ukrainians? We talked about, the Germans and the Poles will, give them theirs and then go backfill them. So what the heck? I mean, they've been talking about that for over a year.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. And I think right now, obviously there's political decisions that are made. There's NATO political decisions that are made. And then there's also, Europeans are very, very nervous. I mean, the threats of Putin dropping a nuke, to me, are not unfounded. Okay. And so that's one of the concerns. So I think everyone's saying, hey, there's certain red lines people aren't really ready to jump across. Now, the training, somebody asked me recently from the UK, I used to work with them over there, said, hey, how long would it take to train someone in an F-16? Well, I go, how capable do you want them to be? All right, so that's a flip side of the question. You can put them in the airplane, they'll probably do okay. But, you got the maintenance tail, the logistic tail, making those things continue to fly and all that. So I think it's a very, very complicated situation. The one thing that I didn't mention is I do moonlight as a Naval War College professor adjunct. I teach distance education for them. I start another class in 3 weeks, and that's one of the big questions that always comes up. But I do that as well. So I keep my fingers involved with professional education. And this is a really hot topic. I'll be in Newport all next week doing a faculty seminar, and that's one of the big things that we're going to be even talking about as a faculty. Yes, sir.
Great presentation. Thank you for your service. I don't mean to be that guy to ask this question, but I am generally curious. What's been your experience in the Navy, or even when you're flying with UAVs?
Oh, the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles? Yeah. So one of my pictures I had in the slides earlier was of a little kid wearing a flight suit that didn't fit him, and that was my youngest son, Carter. He spent 6 years as a UAV sensor operator. Oh, you mean like UFOs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. UFOs. Yeah, the other term. Yeah, the other term. Yeah, the new term. Yeah, UFOs. I have no idea. Never saw one. Yeah, never seen one. Navy guys seem to see them. I never see them. But I had a nothing against the Navy guys. And look, there's 5 Navy guys I'm working with today that all came in. So I'm gonna go back and ask them where the UFOs are. I'm gonna tell them that was a hot topic because I know they've all seen them, but they're just not sharing with me. Yes, sir.
What do you think will be the most current result right now with the Taiwan situation, and then taking out further?
Oh yeah, that's is that like a powder keg in and of itself. Retired Brigadier General Dave Stilwell, that's a name I'll throw out at you. Google him sometime, find out who he was. When he retired out of the Air Force, he was an Undersecretary of State under Mike Pompeo for everything China. The reason Stilly was in that job, and he was confirmed by the Senate 97-0. So there is nothing that would ever stop a guy like Dave Stilwell from being confirmed at that level because of who he is, because he's a tremendous, tremendous American, and he speaks fluent Mandarin. He was a linguist in college. He speaks Hangul, but still he was also a defense attaché in China. He is working right now at the United States Air Force Academy doing curriculum on China and all things China. Still, he puts a lot of stuff out there on LinkedIn, and it's really dealing with this thread that you're putting in there, because as he's constantly looking at what's going on, To give you an example, when he was working in the Pentagon on one of his last tours on the Joint Staff, Chinese delegations would come to the Pentagon and they would get tours, and he would take them down a hallway, kind of showing, hey, here's what happened in the Second World War with Japan. And it was kind of a history, and he would be walking them through it. He'd get to the end of the hallway, and a lot of times he would turn to them and said, now you understand why everyone's concerned about you. If you look at the islands that they're building up in the South Pacific, islands that are all out there in magazines, Fiery Cross Reef, any other numbers of islands, they're building full-blown runways, they're building them full up to support combat operations. They're pretty much building an entire ring in the South China Sea. All right. In the meantime, they keep running practice drills towards Taiwan. But they're not stupid enough to go do that because they understand where chip manufacturing is coming from, and they understand where global economy comes into play. They understand money. So they'll keep rattling the sabers all they want. I really don't think that they're going to go and do it, but I do think they keep warming up for it. And I do think that, maybe someday they'll just, I think one of the greatest things that ever happened to keep Taiwan safe is the fact that Putin's all bogged down in Ukraine. He thought he was going to have Kiev in 2 weeks. Here you are a year and a half later. So I think that's probably what's keeping that right the way it is. Money, and it's not going to be as easy as they think.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.